Well, welcome back to CBMC Podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, my name is James Chao, your host, and every month where we get to take a deep dive into CBMC's Young Professional story. If you don't know CBMC, it is Christian Business Men's Connections, and which has been around for 97 years and over 100 countries and 340 different cities in the United States alone. And I have the privilege of today connecting with Daniel. You know, it's a very interesting story of how we met, but I'm really excited for him to tell his story. So Daniel, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, first of all, shout out to you and Hunter. This is amazing what y'all are doing, and what a privilege and honor to be able to even speak on this. And I'm grateful to have this time with you. A little bit about myself. I was born in South Korea. My father was a 21-year Air Force vet. Moved to the States when I was 3 and back to Korea. And then for some reason, my parents wanted to retire in Alabama, of all places. So I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama. I was one of, 7 Asians. And then Hyundai came and changed the landscape. But, God has moved us all over, being a military brat. But, it's amazing the journey of all the places I could have ended up, but here I am now in Atlanta. Recently I've been with Inspirity for the past 4 years as a business consulting. Just have a son that's 3 years old. My wife, Amy, we celebrated 7 years actually last month, so excited for that. And, kind of my Christian journey, I owe a lot to my wife. I like many men, my story is similar. I grew up around the church my whole life. My mom modeled, what a Christian should do. And so I was always at church with my mom, and she served the church as a secretary. And literally we spend, in Asian church, in Korean church, we'll go to church from 9 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. We didn't leave. And so you got really close with other church people. Our youth only had about 7 to 8 people, but we were really close. So grew up around the church. I remember a summer retreat where I proclaimed, my life to Christ, was really impactful. And then, like a lot of men in college, I kind of lost my way. I started, chasing after the world and not necessarily what God's given. And it's funny how everything kind of works itself, and then God placed His greatest blessing, Amy, my wife. She's a PK, and I remember I was attracted to her because she is a woman of faith, and I remember spiritually she was just like the perfect person, and so I'm grateful for that, and how God's placed her there. But I would say I wasn't fully committed to the Lord. But that was kind of a spiritual start, because that's what really started sparking that interest in wanting to walk towards Christ. But I remember, I'll tell you like a kind of a quick story. My father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer in 2022, and my wife was a teacher at the time, and she was very busy. Like most teachers, she was slammed, and I remember she recently just transitioned to a new role to work from home because she was pregnant at the time. Mm-hmm. So we're expecting, our first child, but then also we're dealing with a lot of family stuff at the time. And I remember hearing about that, and they live in Raleigh, so we decided to go drive and visit. And from there, like, I thought about it. I was like, you should stay with your dad. I told Amy, I was like, you get to work from home. Let's reap this and support your dad. He needs you there. And I remember the drive back, I got in a 22 car accident, and by the grace of God, like, I was able to walk out of this car accident. You never think it would happen to you. And the first thought was, what if Amy, who's pregnant, was in the car with me? And the second thought is, what if I almost didn't even get to meet my son, Caleb? And it like hits you, like God got my attention right then and there that I need to change and be more purposeful with my faith and my walk with God. But it's also like God's protection that helped in that situation. And so, I walked away from that, like just reshaping my entire life for Him. So, it's, then you fast forward, and my poor wife, the two men that's most important to her in her lives, she's dealing with a pregnancy. So she's dealing with her dad and then me. And, fast forward, my father-in-law is cancer-free.
Praise God.
And now, she gets to see her husband who's fully committed to the Lord. So that's kind of my faith journey.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Normally I ask, how did you hear about CBMC?
Yeah.
Right? But obviously, we connected, and if we could rewind that a little bit, why don't you share with the audience how we met?
Yeah.
And what was your impression? Just curious.
Yeah, so, it goes back to other big piece where a lot of people know me as is someone I loved playing basketball. And I met James at LA Fitness, of all places.
Pickup ball.
Playing pickup ball. And we're the two only Asians in the whole court. And we kind of gravitated towards each other naturally, right? But I loved how James played with like hustle and heart. And we became, friends, basketball friends. But we never really like connect from the basketball level. And I just remember like you disappearing. And I believe you moved to like Dunwoody, and now it was always in my mind, like, where's my one Asian guy like I get to play basketball with, right? And then somehow like God kind of brought us back when I kind of transitioned to the business, and I reached out to you, and you welcomed me right away. And then we started talking, and then we found out like the faith. That's what really brought us closer together, like finding out that you're a PK like my wife. And, that's when I think our friendship really transformed, is when we're aligned with faith in God. And you were telling me about CBMC, it was just like magic. Like, because I've been in corporate for, 10 years. So I, share with you how I struggle with wearing that corporate mask, but then also like living out the faith. And sometimes you can't interweave those two, and you're like, I got the perfect group for you. And you told me about CBMC, and the rest was history.
So my story is a little bit different. Even though we played basketball, hustled together all the time, we still fought all the time, right? Try to run the court. We weren't always on the same team, of course.
Yeah.
But I remember I saw you at the LA Fitness, and you had a bruise on your face. Like it looked. And I think you were just trying to, we're at the basketball court. So I was like, no, what happened? And you're like, oh, I got in a big fight.
Yeah.
But I think it was an accident.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're very competitive.
Yep.
But it was like mutual respect. And, I got other stories that can tie to that. But, even in my younger days, I idolized basketball at times.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, I found churches through basketball. So it's funny, God's given us so many gifts, and now I'm at that age where basketball has helped me connect with some of my best friends and through faith. But funny thing too, my wife took care of me 4 weeks into our relationship. I tore my ACL.
Yeah.
And God kind of slowed me down where I couldn't play for a couple of years, and now there's a different joy of basketball. I'm not as competitive like we were or argued, and now it's just more of a joy of connecting with like men and using basketball as a connector to faith.
Absolutely. And I remember, a couple years later when we reconnected, and you were in the business world and just networking, but it was so good to hear that, that you are now a man of faith. And it was really exciting to be able to connect you with CBMC and really helping, young professionals out there be connected and having a mentor and having other Christian men that they can kind of run with. So, so exciting. And now, being a father to Caleb, which is, just a new chapter. And obviously, we're not as competitive on the basketball court, but, making a big impact in the next generation is very important.
Yeah, Yeah, 100%. I owe a lot to you for introducing the group, and but like it's amazing to see our friendship grow. By all things faith and how God's worked through us to reach out to other people, and not only just from the faith standpoint, but from the business standpoint, like what do we want this to look like in the marketplace, and having people that's going through similar life journeys. I can't stress it enough how grateful I am for the group.
For the audience that are listening, if you could share with us maybe some message or from a sage or maybe a mentor, what is one or two things that you took away and just ran with that has made a big impact in your life?
I think as a young person, we sometimes lack the purpose. Sometimes people go through life and just kind of let life just take you. And, when you don't have like that purpose or why behind why you even do what you do. And a lot of my identity was through work. Also being Asian, we were raised to be self-reliant. It was like a weakness to ask for help. So I think talking to other men, like understanding that it's okay to get help. Like you can't do life without God. Like life is so much better when God is in your heart, and you have so much more of a light that you can shine in the world. And so yeah, it's having men that holds you accountable with your faith, but also really sharpen kind of like your business and really shape kind of how you view yourself even at work. And like now you're shifting your mindset on how can I help this person as a Christian, and it starts really just transforming like your life, and it becomes kind of like a second habit where you think of God first before anything else. And so yeah, as far as like the mentors, it's just so much wisdom. Like I couldn't say all the things that's been given, because I went through some hard periods, because I learned, as my role is pretty complex, and I was learning to be a father, but also when you have a kid, you're learning how to be a husband again. So you're really just trying to juggle all these things, and it's 100% through God and just leaning on other people that God's placed in my life to get me through that hard season, right?
I think we all are in different phases and different chapters of our lives. So absolutely, yeah. So tell me about your relationship with your mentor.
Yeah, so I'm actually in kind of a transition with like a mentor. Scott was my first mentor, and he really helped me like understand what it's like to be a father, because like I felt like my priorities were all over the place. Like I need to be there for my wife, my son, work, and also like be a son, but also like I want to serve the church. And so having Scott kind of help me prioritize like what God is really truly calling me to do, and start with him first. And if you're aligned with Christ, like all these things kind of just fall in place. But not only that, the beauty of CBMC, you're not locked into just one mentor.
Yeah.
You could reach out to just about anyone, and they're willing to meet you for coffee and just give you wisdom. Like if I'm struggling with something from a personal standpoint, or like, hey, what did you do in this situation? There's always someone I can call and really just pick their brain and just learn like what was it like to be a father at the early stages. So I would say they prevent you from not necessarily making mistakes, but you got so much wisdom to really get the support that you need. But then I owe a lot to marriage advice, and then really take that with me and back to my family.
That's one thing great about the CBMC is the network, right? It's like a whole fraternity of Christian businessmen, which is really exciting. And as you said, Every year we'll have a mentor, and then next year you'll have another mentor, and eventually you'll be a mentor to the next generation. As far as what you mentioned earlier about living the being a good father and husband and having all the mentors that you've had, I love in CBMC, it's not about living a 2-hour Christian life on a Sunday. It's about integrating it, integrating our life into God's calling, into God's purpose. So I love how you kind of really elaborated on that. Tell us what the next, your son is 3, right, Caleb?
Yeah.
And tell us where you feel like your next chapter, your next lesson that God wants you to learn.
Yeah, it's funny. I only have 2 more years of YP, right? It's hitting me that.
Yeah, but you look so young, though.
Being Asian, it helps. But yeah, it still hits me that I'm about to hit 40, and so you start really thinking of what next looks like. And honestly, if I want to be very vulnerable, I never thought I had gifts to be able to serve the church or a CBMC growing up. I would show up to church and get kind of out selfish and got what I needed from service, and then went back home and kind of did whatever. But I think CBMC's really inspired me to be more of a leader within my home church, but also with having the opportunities to lead more in CBMC in itself, and then it kind of grows into more other aspects of your life. But currently I'm working on discipleship with my pastor at my home church, looking to take a leadership role, and then really just the gifts that God's given us individually. How can we serve the church with the gifts He's given us? So now I'm starting to integrate, our passion in basketball for our sports ministry, be fishers of men, and I was that guy that came to church because of basketball at times, and now I get to be the guy that invites people to basketball and introduce to church. Or hey, if it's a business professional, I have CBMC to invite to, because I think me and you have conversations on the side about being in sales, and it's not really sales, but it's influence, right? And it's God's kind of has a way of working through our learnings and our journeys, and we can use that influence to really help God's kingdom, be connector of people. That's our gifts. Being in the sales world, we get to interact with a lot of people, and now we get to share the light that we have through our connections. And then people they'll get curious, why are these guys so happy when a lot of other salespeople seem beat up or miserable? So for me, that's kind of where I'm trying to figure out more of ways where God will allow me to serve Him. And I'm starting to piece together kind of His vision for not just me, but my family, and how we're growing as a Christian family as a whole.
I think that's very important. You talked about the relationship and level of influence, because I think the devil wants us to be isolated, right? But really we need to be leaning on each other for support, for love, and it's tackling on layers and layers of relationship, which is really what God wants. Because when you're isolated, I think it's really easy to doubt or have these negative thoughts and doubt your talent. But the young professionals here at CBMC, we know that God has blessed us with the talents, and to be able to use it the right way for His kingdom.
Yeah.
So tell us, if for our audience out there who are listening, what are some advice that you would give for young adults, young professionals, especially if they're kind of sitting on the sideline, wondering if this is for them, or what is it about? Can you share that a little bit?
Psalm 16:3, commit to the Lord in all your works, and your plans will be established. And what that means is, if you fully commit to God Himself, all the plans you have for your own self doesn't matter, because God's going to provide for you. Don't worry about things of this world, because I've been distracted as a young person, like going for things that are irrelevant now at my age. So if you fully commit to God and His plans, it's going to transform who you are as an individual and as a person, and that, you know, in tune will really carry out your faith to really impact other men, because it's not necessarily even about yourself. I think that's one thing as a Christian. As soon as you realize this is much bigger than our own self, and when you start truly thinking about how can I serve others, that's when everything really changes in your life, your career, in your family, and then in your relationships and even your friends. And so that's probably the one advice I can give anyone is, you know, is think of less of yourself and more like Christ.
So leaning into God's plan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I heard a story, an example, analogy, that, you know, when you're a fish and you're born as a fish, you just know how to swim. It's in you, right? That's the original plan. And no matter how hard you train, you're never going to fly. Yeah. And same thing with a bird, you know, you're just born to fly. And no matter how hard you train, you're not going to swim. And we were born to do God's work and His plan. So if you're trying to deviate from that, it's going to be a big challenge and an uphill. But if we just lean in on God's plan, everything will fall into place.
100%. Amen.
So, is there anything we could be praying for you for, Daniel?
Yeah, you know, currently my wife, Amy, she just has a new opportunity. She just got a job as a director.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so, you know, we're kind of going through a transition, so she's had to do a little more traveling to Boston a few times, but she's in a leadership role where she gets to really impact a nonprofit. And I hope God continues to work through her to serve like the people that she gets to impact directly. And then for me, you know, I would say like capacity. I'm in a very busy season of my personal life with the kid and career, but also I want to really get more involved in like CBMC and the church. And so right now we're gearing up for our short-term mission. Mm-hmm. We're raising funds for, you know, the mission trip, and I hope, you know, God bless my church, Charis, to serve the community of Clarkston, you know, and I hope, you know, God works through us to really impact this community, and then really introduce faith to them. And so, yeah, like the prayer for that and just really continue to help me grow as an individual so I can, you know, continue to, you know, shine light in His kingdom. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for your time and being able to share your story and being vulnerable. And thank you all for watching. Check out our monthly episodes that we're going to be releasing. But if this is your first time, every month we'll be able to dig deep into a story of a Christian young professional and how they lean in on God's faith. So thank you so much for your time, and we will see you next month.